This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. So we decided to strike while the iron's hot, and we're going to talk about the red pill marriage movement. It's been in a lot of social media over the past week. There's a particular, I don't know, influencer, I don't know what you call her, who decided to stir up some trouble last weekend, and she posted a lot of pretty awful sounding things about marriage and how it should be avoided and how men and women are more or less, they should see each other as enemies. So there was a lot of that back and forth last week on the social media platforms. And I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to draw any more attention to her page. She has enough followers who are listening to her, and I think it's a shame. So we gathered some information. We can talk about our own kind of experience with this kind of thing, and then we're going to push back really hard on the whole concept because it's just
Right.
it's just horrible, what's happening. We already have, falling marriage rates in this country. Less and less people are actually getting married. More and more men are afraid of committing. More and more women are committing, and then 70%, it's 70% women who initiate divorces. So it's not a pretty picture right now. And it's up to old fart married couples like us to push back on this, because marriage is worth saving. It's worth having. It's worth the risk.
It's more than that. I mean, it is definitely worth the risk, and
Yeah.
it brings you fulfillment. And we'll
Yeah.
get into
Right. We're going to
that, but it's also something that's necessary for our civilization.
Yeah,
to
it
be
is.
honest.
It is.
Totally, it's necessary. And anyway, so we'll get to that point, but let's talk about this red pill stuff. And
Yeah. So one of the things that was brought up in one of the responses was some of this could be, a lot of it probably, impacted by how your family affected you. If you grew up in a family, and a lot of people in our generations grew up in broken families, broken homes, that kind of thing. So if that's what you grew up seeing, and not just maybe your family, but your friends' families and other people in your own, not just your parents, but other people in your family, just throwing marriage away, getting a divorce, whatever it is, then that's going to have an impact on how you view relationships and marriage. And it did have a big impact on me. I didn't live with my dad till I was older, so I didn't really see a good example of what married life was supposed to be until I was 18. I mean,
right.
My parents got divorced when I was 8. So, and then my mom remarried horribly. Just that was just a whole, anyway, I've talked about it in previous podcasts. I'm not going to go into it again. But it did taint my vision of what relationships should look like. And a lot of what this person last weekend was spewing, it occurred to me that that's a lot of what I struggled with in my late teens until I met you. And she's in her
20s.
mid 20s, I
Yeah.
guess. So, I think there's some baggage. She's carrying around some baggage. She's just kind of going
Maybe.
around inflicting it on other people.
Could be projecting.
Yeah, she's projecting.
A lot of people do that. She definitely doesn't have any experience.
No, definitely not.
While she
And she was
tries
attacking people
who do
that
have.
have been married for a long time and saying, it won't last, just kind of bashing. Really, it was pretty bad. She went after a celebrity couple that's been married for 20 years.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah. Anyway.
So,
but I know in my late teens, I was going around saying, oh, I get married. husbands and children just make you fat. And that was my summation of the whole relationship thing. It's like, I don't want anything to do with that. Being fat in my house was like the worst thing you could be. So I didn't want anything to do with any of that. And I also, at that point, had developed a good amount of contempt for just men in general. I, in high school, would date a guy for a couple of months, and then I would just intentionally dump him to hurt him. And I just did it over and over again. And I would just tell people, it's just guys. It's not like they have feelings. Because that's what I grew up with. You know?
Yeah.
I just, my stepdad, I know he had feelings, but he never expressed them to me. So, you know, I just kind of developed this contempt.
From what you told me, his only emotion was
Rage.
or
Yes.
anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you developed this contempt, and that comes from culture too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, all you have to do really is flip on any TV show or movie at this point, especially now in 2023. It's gotten really bad. And what do you see? The women are strong and heroic, and the men are oafish and stupid. All of them. I mean, I've seen very few TV shows that don't have that trope.
Yeah. And that's been going on for when you start to see it, and then you start to think back.
Right.
Like I can think back, obviously, given my age, I can think back 50 years.
Yeah.
And think, yeah, I've seen the progression of shows where there were a few where the men and women were smart,
Right.
right, and so on.
Yeah.
But then over the years, it's become more and more where the guys are lazy or, like you said, oafish,
Oafish, fat, stupid.
stupid, yeah. And the women are, smart and capable and all that.
Yeah.
And even more so now.
Right.
It's like this whole, over the past few years, it's just become so, they would say, on the nose. It's like so in your face.
Yeah, it really is.
Right? But we've been conditioned that way in culture.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I would say that's like at least 2 generations back, right? We had some shows that we grew up watching where, you know, the dad was strong and the mom was strong, and they worked together, and they, you know, they made things work, and there were a lot of shows like that back in the 70s and 80s, and then it just kind of it petered out, you know, and everything got turned upside down, and it's just been that way ever since. And
It's
now
more
we're
than
dealing
just
with
entertainment too.
It is. It's not. It's media in general. It's also, you know, books that you read or
Advertising.
advertising. I mean, it's just so saturated at this point. You know,
Okay.
men have no value and women have all the value. And I'm not saying that women have no value at all, but I'm saying men have been devalued to the point that we don't see them as necessary anymore. Almost. Except as sperm donors. That's about it. So this red pill marriage movement just kind of turns everything on its head. It turns everything upside down. It creates contempt in women for men, and also creates contempt in men for women. It's
almost like a anti-feminist.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
Maybe.
they want it to be.
That's what they're trying
right.
to appear as, but they end up at the same place, right? The feminists, I don't need men. We can be independent,
right.
all that. And this is saying, men, you don't need women.
Yeah.
Right? They're just going to abuse you and then take all your stuff when they divorce you and all that.
Yeah.
So don't get married.
Well,
so
and
the
that,
message is the same.
That's the fault of societal collapse and no fault divorce, things like that, you know. And I mean, honestly, the court system at this point is set up to favor women 99% of the time, no matter how crappy of a wife or a mother she is.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the way it is. So also, young people are so short-sighted at this point, and their attention span is about the length of a gnat. And they don't... What we've done is taken what's supposed to be building a relationship that's moving towards commitment, and we've turned it into, can I have sex with you? And that's it. And
Right.
we've reduced sex down to the pure physical act, as if there's nothing else attached to that.
Right.
And I was just thinking, before we started, I think it was I'm not on TikTok. I don't want anybody to think I'm on TikTok. I watch other people's reactions to TikTok videos. So there was I think it was on TikTok. This girl, and she hooked up with a guy, and it was her first time. This is how she lost her virginity. And the guy, this was like a Tinder thing. She went on Tinder to give up her virginity. God. So she hooks up with this guy, and it shows them after the deed is done, and she's dressed and he's on his phone trying to get a hold of his buddies to come pick him up so he can go find another girl. And she's just sitting on the bed going, can we, like, have dinner? Or, you know, like, is it anything? And he's like, oh, thanks, no, I got stuff to do. I'm going to go now. And it just, like, that is the stark difference between how men view sex and women view sex most of the time, right?
Or how we've been taught to do sex.
Yes. But men are more capable of reducing it down to a just purely physical act. They are. They could disconnect from...
Yeah, because, I mean, they look at it a little bit more, I don't want to say rationally, and women are irrational, because that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But they look at it a little more logically. I mean, there's feelings there. I mean, I'm a man, so you know there's something there. But if
Right.
you're taught, just go have the pleasurable moment,
Yeah.
and then move on to the next girl.
Yeah.
Especially if you're the type of guy who can get matched up and meet multiple. You know, you're
Yeah.
not incentivized to have a relationship at all,
Yeah.
right? Because the girls are giving it away for free. I mean, why
Yeah.
commit?
Yeah. That is the big problem with, you know, where we're at right now. But, I mean, the flip side of that is the girl, the reason she asked him if he wanted to, like, go grab a bite to eat or hang out is because women view sex more as building attachment, or
Right.
there's more emotion involved in it, and that's what she was looking for, was the connection. Women tend to view sex as more like, this is how I connect with you, you know,
Yes.
emotionally.
But I think I agree, and but the culture from a man's perspective is, don't get attached, because
Yes.
that's when they can hurt you.
Yeah.
Just go have fun,
Right.
but don't form any attachments,
Right.
because you're going to get taken to the cleaners, right? Especially if you're successful, you're going to lose half your stuff or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So
So that's men's incentive, or they no longer have this incentive to form relationships.
or commit, or yeah.
Right.
I mean, this is how things have gotten flipped on their head. Just, we have this message now, and it's been in the movies for decades, and you know, it's been like every stinking rotten romance novel you read. They portray sex as love. I think you talked to me about the end of Speed, that movie that I only saw once because I hated
We've
it.
talked about that before.
Yeah. You know.
You got this whole traumatic experience. You know, the bus is going to blow up, and they had to get everybody off the bus and all that stuff, and at the very end, they Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock got off the bus,
Yeah.
and I guess they were on a car door or something dumb like that, and when it stopped, they said something about, relationships based on traumatic events usually don't last. So the last, I think it was the very last line of the movie was, well, we'll just have to base it on sex then. And like, that's the message.
It is.
That all the teenagers who saw that movie because it was so cool.
Yeah.
Back then anyway.
Right.
That was the message they took away, right?
Yeah.
Your relationship should be based on sex. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sex is a powerful tool. It's very powerful. And it can make you, it gets everything stirred up, and it can make you feel like you should be attached to this person. And that's actually what it's supposed to do in the context of marriage, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's just so common. It's so incredibly common now that it doesn't matter what TV show you watch, what commercials you watch, you watch these celebrity relationships. It's always the same thing. Let's have sex first, and then we'll see what happens. And This is how marriage has been destroyed, because people who go on a couple of dates and then they have to go and have sex, and the sex is great. Well, now you think you love this person. Maybe you do.
But you
don't
know.
know. I mean, you can't know if you love somebody just because the sex was great. Because you know what? Sex is easy. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to put a lot of emphasis on that part of your relationship. You don't have to talk. You don't have to communicate. You don't have to see if you have things in common or if you have common values or anything like that. You're just getting in bed and getting it done. I mean, it's so backwards. And, we've already confessed that we did it the wrong way. We did.
Yeah.
We did.
We did.
We started having sex pretty early in our relationship, but we also took a year. We had a year engagement, and we had some premarital counseling, both with my parents and with the pastor.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we did it. I'm not recommending that method. I'm really not.
No, we're saying we didn't do it right.
No.
But we did do some of the things right.
Right.
And that certainly helped.
Yeah.
But it could have been a lot better.
Yes, it could have. I mean, yeah, it could have. Anyway, all I'm saying is, if you start your relationship off after, it's the third date, I guess it's time to have sex. If you start your relationship that way, that's not going to be beneficial to a long-term committed relationship.
Right.
Because good sex, a great relationship does not make. That's not how it works. You really need to get to know the person that you are considering committing yourself to, and in bed is not the way to do it.
True.
Also, okay, so the other side of this is, because of the way media is set up now, and the movies and the romance novels and all of that kind of stuff, and because men are portrayed as oafish and slow and stupid and all of this, women have had their brains scrambled by this stuff. So there's way too many women who enter marriage with that little contempt.
Yes.
For men. They've already started with it. And that's like walking into a marriage with the match already lit.
Yeah.
Because once, it's kind of like, if I tell you, on the way to work today, look for the red cars. And you're going to come home and I'm going to say, how many red cars did you see? And you're going to give me some rough estimate. And then if I say, how many white cars did you see? You're going to say, I didn't see any. If you go into marriage already seeing things to be contemptuous of, it's only going to grow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a natural human thing,
Yeah.
right? You know, if you're looking for something,
Yes.
if you think it's pervasive and you're looking for it,
Right.
then that's what you will see, and you'll see it all the time, and you'll even see it when it isn't there,
Yeah, you will.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go into a marriage, and this goes both ways, by the
Right.
way, but the culture is specifically taught women that men deserve their contempt, and they go into the marriage, and that's all they see, and even if you just do something different, do the same task but it's done a different way,
Right.
but it's still accomplished, it's like, well, that's not right because it's not the way I would have done it.
Yeah.
There's contempt.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're saying is, you've got this, you enter marriage with contempt already, and then it just builds from there.
Yeah.
And then you've got 70, and there, I know there's a lot of nuance and more things that happen before divorce is started, but you've got 70% of women or more initiating the divorce, and it's because they have contempt.
Yeah.
And they might say, well, it's because he cheated. It's like, well, and that was wrong. He shouldn't have, but there was the reason that he did, such as no real relationship,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of what we're trying to get at.
Right.
You got to be working on the relationship, and
You're withholding sex because you don't.
well, that's part of it.
What? Yeah. Whatever. I'm not making excuses for cheating. That's not what we're saying
Right.
at all.
But the statistics also say that by the time a woman files for divorce, she's already got the next guy lined up, and she's probably been cheating with him.
Oh, okay.
Using, maybe using her husband cheating as an excuse,
Right.
right? So we're getting into nitty gritty, and we don't need to go down
Right.
into the weeds too much. And it's not all women's fault; it's not all men's fault. But the culture has taught us to be pitted against each other.
Yeah, definitely. A lot
Right.
of division. And actually, part of this person that we're talking about, part of her problem is she spends time. Why she would do this, I don't know. Hanging out in divorce courts. So it's kind of like the seeing the red car thing.
Yeah.
That's all she sees, and that's how she views marital relationships. I could see why she could be angry and contemptuous. I mean, she needs to not do that. She needs to go find some nice families to hang around and, be around some children that she can like and play with, and that. I mean,
be around the success stories
yes,
too, right?
she does. And there are a lot of people who responded to her with success stories that she would just push back. Just like, oh, it's not going to last, and I'm sure he's cheating on you, or I'm sure you're not really happy. Just things like that.
Same stuff,
So this
yeah.
is the stuff that she's hearing in divorce court, and then she's projecting it on everybody. She's vomiting it on everybody else. Is what she's doing. Anyway, so but see, that's what this red pill movement is. It's just discouraging people from getting married by using the cultivated contempt that's already there.
Right. And some lies.
And yeah, there's lies.
But we'll
Yeah.
get to some of that. And where are we on there? Go ahead.
Right here. There was also another series of videos that came out in the last month or so, and it was 30-year-old women who, I got married in my 20s, and now I'm a 30-year-old hot girl, and I'm divorced. Like, that was
Trying
something
make
to
that trendy.
brag about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were
trying
bragging.
to,
They were
yeah.
bragging.
Bragging about it, this is hot girl stuff, going out and hiring yourself a lawyer and getting it done, and now you're free, quote unquote, to go pursue what you want to pursue. You had the marriage thing and you did that, but you don't need to do it anymore. And they really portrayed divorce as this real quick and easy thing. One of them said, so you gotta sign some paperwork and make some appointments. I've watched both of my brothers go through this,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like that. Wasn't like that, you know. There was nothing quick and easy about any of it. And when my parents got divorced, there was nothing quick and easy about that either. I mean,
And there was trauma.
yes, a lot of trauma.
You rip apart family.
Yes.
You you're basically teaching your kids there's no stability.
Yeah.
You know, this thing that they're a part of, the family.
Yeah.
There's no stability. We could rip it apart anytime we wanted, and you just have to deal with it. Right? And
Yeah.
it's like, what does that teach them?
Yeah.
You know? No wonder kids have anxiety and everything else
Yeah.
on the rise, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, did you want to... we listened to another monologue last night about this whole... all of this mess. And you took some notes on that. Did you want to...
Well, we talked about, you know, how the red pill teaches men. It's mostly men as the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and they pretend to despise feminists. But we already said, you know, they end up at the same conclusion: marriage is bad, right?
Yeah.
And that's the wrong conclusion,
Right.
Right. And a lot of these people talking about it, they're typically young. They're this particular young lady is young. She's not experienced at all. She's not married.
Right.
As far as we know, she's never been married. Doesn't have kids.
No,
And like
none
you
of
said,
that. Yeah.
her only, she sees divorce court or whatever, and then we've been living with this lie about, and I think we've talked about this before, and we got a little more data, not a ton, but we're told that marriages fail at 50%. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then some guy has even come out now and saying, you know, it's really 75%. There's 50% divorces, but then the other 25% of marriages, it's where the husband determines that it's just cheaper to stay together even if he's miserable, that sort of thing.
Right.
So you get the 75% of basically failed marriages even if there is no divorce. It's, I don't know, I mean, but all of that doesn't come from any real data.
No.
It comes from a divorce lawyer
Right.
or two.
Right.
And again, that's all they see because that's what they deal with all the time. You know?
Right.
So you can't take that as a data point. So the best we can do to refute this lie is go to the census data, and let me look at my notes here. The census data says about 35% of marriages, people who've been married, will get divorced. Right?
It's still really high.
It's high, but it's not 50%.
Right.
And we can also look back, and it's like the lie about 50% started in the 80s.
Goes
and
back
it's been
like 40 years.
Yeah,
30 years.
40 years,
Yeah.
45 years. But it's been the same number,
Yeah.
right? They've never changed it. And it's like, really? That's not how human beings work.
No.
And if you really look at it, then the number of divorces is going down as a percentage,
Yeah.
right? Yes, the number of marriages is going down too. But of the married people, the number of divorces are going down. So
Right.
hopefully people are working at it a little harder.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. Or maybe not rushing into marriage. Hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, so why we don't want to give up on marriage, and I mentioned this earlier, it's like marriage has served as the bedrock of society, human civilization for
Right.
thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden we want to give up on it. It's wrong. It just doesn't work. It doesn't help us. It's like that's crap, right?
Yeah.
Marriage is the bedrock of society. It forms the family forms civilization, right? That's
Yeah.
where you learn how to live with other people and grow up and learn how to be part of society.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a community growing up, right? It's a small community, but it's a secure
Right.
place for kids. And we've talked about this before, where marriage is two people. We should be viewing it like this: marriage is two people that are flawed, two flawed people working together to become better,
Right.
right? And that's what we are,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Right.
And that's what everybody is when you get married. It's married. It's not a business deal. That's the way the culture wants you to look at it.
Yeah.
It's just this business deal. It's a contract. You can break it.
Well, that's what the whole, getting divorced is just,
It's just break the contract.
just
right?
signing some papers and making some appointments.
Exactly.
They make it sound like,
Right.
a business deal.
Right. So, and then the whole percentage failure rate, of marriage, it based on census data, actual data, is 35%. But even
Right.
if it was more, doesn't matter what the number is. We have to realize that our chances of our marriage failing is not based on general statistics. So we don't just.
Right.
That's not how human beings work. Again,
Yeah.
right? The statistics only tell you a number
Yeah.
in general, but they don't look at what those people were doing and why the marriage failed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you do some basic things, you can bring your chances down to zero. So this is or close to zero.
Right.
Right. To be honest, I mean, everything's a risk.
Sure.
No matter what you do, you go
Yeah.
out and drive in a car, you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Right. Let's use that for instance. Let's see. I don't remember the percentage for driving, but there's a certain percentage of drivers that get into car accidents. That doesn't mean that that's your percentage of
Right.
getting into your probability of getting into a car accident.
Right.
Right. If the number is 25%, that doesn't mean that's your percentage, your probability, right? Because if you're a good driver, if you're careful, if you're not driving crazy, your percentage goes way down.
Right.
Obesity, for instance, is another thing about human beings, right?
Right.
The obesity rate in America is 40%. 40% of Americans are beyond overweight.
Right.
Right? If and you can see it. You look at pictures of people in the 60s, 70s, and you look at pictures of people today, like say on the beach or walking around
Yeah.
or whatever, you can see it. It's like we're unhealthy. But that doesn't mean that your percentage of your chance of becoming obese is 40%. It's not. It's based on your habits.
Yeah.
And your lifestyle and what you do, right? Your behavior. So if you have the right behavior that leads to a good life, as we would say,
Right.
a healthy life, and I'm not, then your percentage of becoming obese is not 40%. It's much lower,
Right.
right? So that's how this kind of stuff works, right? So the 50% lie is more like just to scare everybody. But to be honest, there are some basic things you can do that if you do everything right, or even a lot of things right, then you reduce your chances and you bring your risk of marriage failure down to zero or close to it.
Close to it. Yeah.
Right? Like, pick someone who shares your fundamental values.
Right.
Right? And these are some of the things we've talked about before. Make sure you have a shared faith.
Yeah.
State from the outset that you don't believe in divorce. And we've talked about no plan B in our podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in that episode, it's like if you allow that to be an option,
It's always going to be in the back of your
then
mind.
it will always be there, and you will always take the escape hatch, right, when things get hard.
Yeah.
But if you stay from the beginning and you continue to think it, divorce is not an option. Failure is not an option.
Yeah.
We're going to make this work. And if you have picked the right person, as you should, I'll get to that in a second, then you'll both be of that same mindset, right? And we've talked about before, we believe you should get married young, because we need to start growing and becoming better. But that doesn't mean you should rush or just marry the first person you date, right? You need to, as we say, pick somebody who's got the shared values, the same faith. You have to work on communication. Here's another thing. If you work on communication, if you have patience with each other, if you take care of yourself and each other, right? So it's not a selfishness taking care of yourself, and that's all you do, right? But I'm just talking about exercising and eating right, right? So you both don't get fat, for instance, and lose your looks.
Yeah.
And they go anyway. But you don't have to drive, you don't have to drive away from each other.
Yeah.
In a sense. Right? So if you're doing those things, you bring your risk of your marriage failing down to zero. Right. So we're saying, again, get married young, but don't rush, don't be pressured into a marriage. Really look at each other.
Yeah.
And make sure. Go ahead.
Well, part of that, and I'm going to go back to what I was saying before. Part of that looking at each other and figuring each other out should not include sex.
Right. That should not. And we've said this, and we'll say it again. Don't have sex until you get married. And it's not just a religious thing.
No, it's not.
It's something that gets in the way if you do it before marriage.
Yeah.
And it becomes the focus of your whole relationship.
Right.
Even if you try not to, it's very difficult to not have it become the focus of your relationship. Right? So you should be learning about each other and so on.
You should be figuring each other out. I think I said this either last time or time before. You should be figuring out, how is this person at the dining room table? I said there's this, he or she could be great in the bedroom and terrible at the dining room table, but where are you going to be spending most of your marriage? Not in the bedroom.
Right. Not in the bedroom.
No. I mean, you might have a lot of sex after you get married, and that's going to come and go.
And that's great.
Sure. I mean,
have
all the sex you want, but you are going to have discussions with this person and talk to them and work things out, and
you've got life to live.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when kids come, you've got kids to raise.
Yeah.
And you have to teach them, and it's you shouldn't farm it out.
No.
To anyone.
Right.
They're your children, and you should raise them and train them and bring them up, and it's the greatest
privilege
that you have.
Yeah.
Right? And we farm it out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much of that.
We're not going to go into that, but
right.
But we don't want to do that, right?
Right.
Okay. So all that to be said, all that to get to the point where we don't want to throw marriage out.
No.
Right. Yes, there are issues in the court system, issues in the laws.
Yes.
And we should fight for reforms. Get rid of, for instance, getting rid of no-fault divorce.
Yeah.
Right? And other things. And that's not the point of this, but yes, we acknowledge that there's a lot of reforms that need to happen, that things have gotten way out of hand and it's tilted too far in one direction.
Yeah, it is.
But it's based on falsehood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it too easy. And when divorce is just easy, again, you take the escape hatch rather than, you know what, we need to work this out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
We're chained together.
Yeah.
We've said
That's
this.
Jordan Peterson.
Well,
Jordan Peterson said that.
We're chained together.
Yeah.
So we have to work this out.
Yes. What did he say? You're chained together, and you're not going to want to run away from me, and I'm not going to run away from you, and we're just going to tell each other the truth. And that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it sounds ominous and dreadful, but really it's not.
It's not. If you just do it, you'll find out. It's like, oh my goodness, we can work things out.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway. So, having to do with risk, I'll just wind that part up. And it's like, yeah, it's a risk, but everything's a risk.
Yeah.
You know, you have to accept risk to accomplish anything, to do anything, to go anywhere.
Right.
I mean, even to drive to the grocery store, there's a risk that
Right.
something could happen, right? And you take that risk every day, most of us,
Yeah.
right?
You step out of your house, that's it.
Step out of your house and you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Staying in your house and you're taking a risk. Because bad things will happen if you sit around,
Yeah.
right? And have all your food delivered, for
Yeah.
instance, or whatever.
Right.
And anyway, so take that risk. So the last thing, you know, you can, the only thing that not taking a risk does is just guarantee failure. Whereas if you take the risk with the knowledge of things to do to reduce that risk, to mitigate it, especially related to marriage, based on what we're talking about, then yeah, there's still a tiny little risk that something will go wrong, but probably not. I mean, the probability says that things won't go wrong, right? Because you've done the right things.
Right.
Anyway, so that's why we're saying all this to say, you know, this red pill movement is the wrong thing. It's going to take decades to reform the judicial system, because it took decades to get where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So what are we going to do? Not get married for 40 years? No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the guys that I listened to is like, what are you going to do? Give up your bloodline, your legacy, your everything that you are supposed to be. You're going to just give that up because what? You're afraid?
Yeah. Or or you want to live selfishly.
Or you want to live selfishly.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want to live selfishly, then don't get married.
No. Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah.
Right? But you're going to go live selfishly, and people will see that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of life you'll live, and you might think it's great, but it's not. But within marriage, you must force yourself to not live selfishly.
Right.
But you're going to find a greater satisfaction, a greater joy. You're going to accomplish greater things, and you're going to have a bigger impact on the world by being married.
Yeah.
It's just, and we've seen this in the data too. You know, if you look at the data, married men, for instance, live longer.
And they make more money.
And they make more money than unmarried men.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because you'd think unmarried men, they can work 160 hours a week.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, and just devote themselves. And I've seen it even in my own company where the top execs devote themselves to the company, and their marriage is nothing or it's gone.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, great. So that's what you've done, you know, but if you look at the data overall, and, you know, we've had this discussion about what data does and statistics and all that, but if you look at it overall, you stay married and you do the things that keep your marriage successful, right? And that's not working 160 hours a week,
right,
for instance, and other things. And we've talked about that plenty of times. Then you're going to live longer and you're going to make more money. overall.
And I just was thinking
And it's not just about money,
that,
but that's just a...
there's a silly movie that came out a few years back, and we had never seen it, so we decided to watch it. Was it last weekend? It's called Idiocracy. Everybody's heard of it. Everybody's heard of it. Okay, so
I've never seen it until last weekend.
we watched it because somebody I follow on Instagram kept referring to it. Like, why are we here already? We're already here in the Idiocracy.
Go
This is
watch
not.
that
This
movie.
is
Oh my
not
gosh.
what we're supposed to be doing. And so we watched it, and we laughed. We thought it was funny, but it's also kind of shocking
Yeah.
because it's like if we keep going in this direction, you know, the red pill movement and people just chasing money at all costs and only being interested in sex and money, and that's it. Because that's what the movie was. That's what it
Kind of
portrayed.
like that. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, just sex and money and being entertained constantly,
Right.
right? And that's what the whole movie was. And, you know, we're looking at it going, yeesh, we're already there. We're already there.
We're heading... Well, yeah.
You know, we're kind of you know, porn has saturated every media, you know, outlet and social media and everything. It's everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I think it was last weekend. I think I was trying to get to a restaurant menu, and all of a sudden, porn. Like a bunch of porn stuff popped up, and I was like, what?
I don't know what you did. Oh my gosh.
No, all I did was click on the menu. That was
the
it.
menu. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That one
Yeah.
restaurant took you
So
to some
it's like,
weird
okay,
site.
so say you send your 13-year-old kid, say, you know, okay, well let's get takeout for dinner. Why don't you go look on the computer, you know, click on the menu and tell me what you want. All of a sudden they're bombarded with porn. And it's actually easier than that for a 13-year-old to get access to porn at this point.
Oh, sure.
And, you know, there's all these influencers and social media people who, well, I made this much money this week, you know, doing OnlyFans or, you know, selling pictures of my feet or whatever BS they're doing. Being an influencer, I got this much money from Twitter. And, you know, those people are so few and far between, but yet they make it look
Successful. Yeah.
Yes, they make it look like it's this easy thing to do. We've been doing this podcast now for 3 years.
Yep.
Almost 4 years. And, you know, we don't have a huge audience by any stretch. You know, I try to promote it as much as I can. And all we're trying to do is contribute to the movement that's pushing back on everything that we just talked about.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want this to be the culture. We want our marriage to be part of the culture that's being built, right? But yeah, that movie was quite a shock. I'm not going to recommend it because it was rated R. It was pretty raunchy. So it's just, you know,
Well, go watch Wall-E.
if you okay, Wall-E's a good example too. But if you make the choice to watch it, just be prepared. It is rated R for a reason. But we were just sitting there looking at it going, wow. We're so much closer to that now
than we were when we were younger. Definitely.
Oh my God, when we first got married.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't that. Anyway. So I just wanted to
That's funny.
toss that in there. After all the red pill stuff that I read last weekend, and I was bombarded with it the entire weekend. And then to watch that movie, and it's kind of
Well, you see how
You don't-
everything ties together.
yeah. Well, you don't want to find it depressing because then you know you're headed towards hopelessness as far
And
as
that's
the
not
culture's
what we're
concerned, and
saying.
that's not what we want. You know, we don't want to feel that way or project that kind of that message out there. But
What we're
you know.
saying, we're telling you how to turn that around, to make
Right.
a better society, to make life better for more people.
yeah,
And yourself, not
Yeah.
just more people, but
Right.
and yourself. And the bedrock of society is marriage
Yeah.
and the family. And everything else rests on top of that.
yeah,
Right?
it really
whether
does.
it's church or the government, decisions, people who you vote for and what they do
Mm-hmm.
is based on you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And we want to make society better, so we need to make ourselves better. And the way to do it is marriage. And that is the best means.
Mm-hmm.
And it provides everything we need as human beings,
Yeah.
community and belonging and lots of other things
Right.
related to that. So we're fulfilled, and nobody says it's easy, right? We're not saying
No,
it's easy.
no. I mean,
but
we've shared
everything's
openly
hard.
about our own struggles with.
Absolutely, but making a successful marriage, while it's hard, it's not as hard as having to deal with an unsuccessful marriage or no marriage and being selfish,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Right.
It's a lot better to do the work and have a great marriage and be joyful
Mm-hmm.
than it is to be lazy or avoid marriage, avoid relationships.
Or just have sex with one person after another.
yeah, no real
That's
relationship.
miserable. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's just some physical pleasure, but not
No
really
connection,
what you
no
need.
fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah, not really what you need as a
Right.
human being. Anyway,
So we took a little jog
rant.
sideways there, but that's
Yeah,
that's
okay.
okay. That's okay.
and one day we need to talk about one episode. We need to talk about what marriage really is and really go into it like in depth.
Okay.
One day we'll get there.
We
We're just
probably
hinting at it right
yes,
now, yeah.
we'll probably record another episode sometime around. This is end of September, and it's looking like maybe the beginning of November will be the next.
It's a month.
Yeah,
Little more
so
than a month.
a little more than a month, and we'll try to get a couple more episodes in before the end of the year.
Yep.
Because once Christmas starts, my calendar gets full of cookies and grandchildren and shopping and
Yeah.
Christmas stuff. So I don't think about anything else once the Christmas season hits. So,
All those cookies that I can't eat.
we're trying to be healthy.
Yep.
So,
But I will eat some of them.
on that note, we're going to finish up now.
There's nothing more to say. I don't think.
So this has been Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. Have a great weekend.